all the people out there, how many of you guys have Ian Garry's wife?
Dude, this shit ain't right, dude. She's a succubus. You gotta run away, bro. Hot girls are a dime a dozen.
How does one go from the electrifying promise of an inevitable megastar with the world in his hands to the most disliked fighter in the world, all within the space of a couple of months? Ian Garry's technical striking is a masterpiece painted with the same strokes that once adorned the path of Ireland's legendary Conor McGregor. It was all a dream. But dreams can very quickly collide with reality. And the downfall we're going to talk about today is a harsh reality that Ian Machado Garry had the biggest hand of all in shaping. Our story begins in 2021 as a 7-0, 23-year-old Ian Garry takes the stage for his UFC debut at Madison Square Garden on the very canvas his idol had achieved glory on in his finest moment 7 years earlier. From being pressed on the back foot, Garry ruthlessly capitalized as his opponent overextended, pulling back to land a perfect right hand and score the walk-off knockout. Beautiful, composed, crisp. A first-round KO at MSG in his UFC debut. It doesn't get any sweeter than that. It felt like more than a coincidence, a poetic alignment of destinies, a passing of the torch from one generation to the next. The future had arrived. And you know what that means. Comparisons to one man and one man only. I mean, any Irish fighter with a hint of success is compared to Conor. But when you have a real skill set with slick, beautiful striking, and are tipped to have the potential to challenge for world titles in the future, no-brainer. And importantly, how did Ian respond to these comparisons? Did he welcome them, humbly distance himself, or anywhere in between? He more than embraced them. He practically idolized the notion, putting his word forward that he was the next iteration of the Notorious one himself. Garry declared after his big MSG win,
Wise Irishman once said before me, he stepped in this very cage and he said, we're not here to take part, we're here to take over. And this is the takeover part 2.
Good luck to you, sir. Ian Garry, ladies and gentlemen.
Bold words. Confidence certainly wasn't lacking. Exceptional skills were on display, and a will to be a personality was there. Though it was initially seen as wholesome, the Conor references didn't slow down and didn't seem like they were going anytime soon. Ian has personality, sure, and a will to talk, but he's not being compared to your average, I'm just focused and ready to fight guy here. He's being compared to the notorious Conor McGregor.
Shut your fucking mouth, you'll do nothing. You'll do fucking nothing. Not one of you'll do nothing. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here.
Being brash, cocky, arrogant, and unapologetic is all well and good when you're the most charismatic individual in the history of the sport. But when you lack that same natural charisma and force everything that's coming out of your mouth in a pretty inauthentic attempt to sound like the man you're attempting to emulate, not so much. Though the constant attempts to be like Conor began to irk some fans, Garry was a superstar in the making. And being a bit of a fanboy of the guy's shoes you've been chosen to fill could never be enough to derail that. 5 UFC fights, 5 wins. The future moves to 12-0 by mid-2023. The last victory being the most impressive of all in a spectacular head kick KO victory against a respected dog in Daniel Rodriguez. The gravy train is rolling. The performances keep coming. The attention keeps growing, and the stock keeps rising. Garry's biggest haters are reluctantly being forced to acknowledge his impressive potential. What could possibly go wrong? Well, when you start crossing boundaries of digging and trying to portray people's personal lives in a certain way, that's a recipe for disaster. And disaster for the reputation of Ian Garry soon struck. Exhibit A. Booked against Jeff Neal for UFC 292, Garry puts an old mugshot of Neal after his 2021 arrest of DWI and weapon offenses on a t-shirt before selling them to the public. On the video of him making the t-shirt, Ian Garry was even laughing and saying,
He's gonna hate us.
It enraged Neal's family and even led to his father criticizing Garry personally.
I thought it was funny. I'm like, you think that's funny? Like, there's nothing funny about it. Like, you put somebody's mugshot on a shirt and like, that's funny, that's tasteless,
Now, Jeff Neal isn't a shit talker and couldn't even arguably be criticized for anything he'd said prior. So what was the reason? Trying to sell a fight? Market yourself off the controversy? Okay, sure. But this isn't leaning into a Conor McGregor or Chael Sonnen type classic move here. This is simply a tasteless deep dive into one of the lowest moments of Neal's life and then trying to personally profit and spread awareness of it further. Things don't stop there. Exhibit B. The Neal Magny controversy. After Jeff Neal pulled out of the bout due to injury, Neil Magny was announced as the replacement.
And there's a whooping that you give your son now, like to kind of teach him life a little bit. And being a father, I've become quite accustomed to that kind of whooping now. And
at the UFC 292 press conference, Garry accused Magny of being a child abuser after a media day quote by Magny comparing the whooping he was going to give Garry to the whooping you give your son to teach him life a little bit. The attempt to generate hype quickly turned awkward, failing to resonate with the crowd. Yet Ian persisted, repeatedly revisiting the topic. Now, have your opinions about Magny's comments either way, but this press conference at the best of moments felt like a fruitless attempt by Garry to emulate a classic Conor McGregor sound, falling very short. Ian dominated Magny with brutal calf kicks, repeatedly punching and knocking the veteran down, and clean striking all the way through a secured unanimous decision, even scoring a rare 30-24 scorecard with one judge. But it didn't end there. He continued after the bell, flipping Magny off and verbally burying Magny post-fight. Exhibit C. Getting kicked out of Team Renegade and multiple gyms. Shortly after UFC 292, news surfaced that Ian Garry was no longer welcome at Leon Edwards' Team Renegade gym in Birmingham, England. How did this news come out? Unsurprisingly, from the mouth of Ian Garry.
Leon's phenomenally talented, but I believe he's a little bit insecure in his own mindset. There'll be a lot more to come out soon. I promise you that. I promise you that.
Discussing a potential bout for the title against Leon down the line with Sky Sports, Garry referred to Leon as insecure and raised doubt over the champ's mindset. Is Garry insinuating that he was seen as such a threat to Leon, the undisputed welterweight champion who hasn't lost in 8 years and just matched GSP's divisional win streak record, that Leon was insecure about his presence? The same Leon that Garry previously admitted sent him to the hospital with a patented head kick in sparring? I mean, it's not impossible. Smart champions watch rising contenders like hawks, especially those around them. But there's more than reasonable doubt for that being why Garry was kicked out here. In a written interview with The Independent, Garry went into more detail, stating Leon and his head coach had an issue with me training on the mats and recently have asked me not to train there because Leon doesn't want any insecurities or doubts on his own mats within the gym, which I don't fully understand. I get that we're both in the top 10 and you might see me as a threat, but I'm not a threat to you right now. I'm not fighting for the title right now. His coach said the words, "Ian is a threat. I cannot have Leon having any doubts or insecurities." That makes me think someone is weak-minded and can't have another contender training on the mat. That's why gym conflict is annoying. For me, why not have the other elite guy on the mat? Why not train with him? Why not have him push you? Why not learn and grow from each other? Rocky Edwards soon contradicted Garry's claims. Edwards stated that Garry's expulsion from the gym wasn't about protecting his own confidence, but rather about a clash of personalities and a misfit with the gym's culture. The gym decided that he just wasn't fitting for the gym. We're just too different, the culture in our gym. He's like a talker or social media guy. Brings his cameras everywhere. He's late to sessions. This wouldn't be the first time we've heard things like this about Garry. In fact, it's soon become a recurring theme, as waves of fighters came out to criticize the Irish star over similar complaints. Getting kicked out of any MMA gym? Bad look. Getting kicked out of multiple? Questions have to be asked. Notably, he'd been kicked out of his original Dublin gym, Team KF, around the time of winning his Cage Warriors world title, with the team releasing a statement back in 2021 stating he'd become uncoachable. And here we reach the tipping point of Ian Garry becoming public enemy number 1. Exhibit D. The WAG controversy. When fans delved into the life of Ian Garry's wife, Layla Anna-Lee, a former MMA presenter, the rumor mill went into overdrive, swirling with speculation about various aspects of her past and her marriage to Garry. MMA fans stumbled across Layla Anna-Lee's book, How to Become a WAG, and began criticizing her for what has been interpreted as a guide for gold diggers, immediately using the opportunity to poke fun at the relationship. To make matters worse, after Garry had previously joined his last name with his Brazilian partners, adding Machado, rumors spread everywhere that this was actually the last name of Layla's ex-husband, Richard Cullen, who just so happens to work as Garry's nutritionist. Oh, and the rumors didn't stop there. They continued as people speculated that Cullen was living with the pair, a claim many took as 100% fact. What followed Ian and Layla was waves of pure mockery, hatred, and abuse, even to the point you could call it a witch hunt, or if you will, a WAG hunt.
Would you take your wife's last name?
Absolutely not. Are you kidding me? That's the biggest joke I've ever seen.
Read the book How to Be a Wag. Would you take your wife's last name?
No. I would never take my wife's last name. My wife, ex-husband's last name. No.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't do that.
No.
Yeah, it wouldn't.
Everyone from fans to fighters to content creators to more mainstream people outside of the typical MMA circle started commenting on it. Sean Strickland, of course, skyrocketed it to another level, branding Layla a succubus and urging Garry to run away. From there, an uncontrollable wildfire around the name of Ian Machado Garry had spread.
Find out you're 26, she's 40, the ex-husband lives with you, you took the last name, because she wrote a book on how to be a wag. I didn't know what a wag was until now, dude. Right?
Garry threatened legal action against Strickland, and whether in his rights to or not, simply never a good look in the MMA community. This is just not the crowd you want to be hearing that. Booked for UFC 296 against Vicente Luque amidst the peak of all of this, Ian Garry's name was not going to be getting a break. He'd found himself in the spotlight on a card headlined by Leon Edwards and Colby Covington, both known to have their issues with him. A fight week of media throwing that in not just your own, but every one of your peers' faces sounds unappealing to say the least. And a press conference with Colby digging into your deepest personal insecurities right now, just about the worst case scenario.
I got one more survey for you all. For all the people out there, how many of you guys have Garry's wife? Oh man.
Yet maybe there was an opportunity to rise out of the mud here, to show the haters that no matter how deep they go, you'll remain unaffected and focused on the task, that you have no care for their opinions. How did Ian start the week? By skipping media. Though it soon came out that Ian had expressed concerns over his family's safety, Layla assured people he'd be there for the big press conference. Well, nope. Dana White revealed that Ian had fallen ill, starting with the flu and escalating into pneumonia, and was officially off the card. Worst case scenario.
I know it's out there. There's some speculation that Ian Garry and Luque is off. It is true. It is. Ian Garry started with the flu that turned into pneumonia. So that fight is off and is not happening. It is true.
Some, notably Darren Till, threw doubt on the claims, with it being a very convenient time for Garry to pull out of the bout under the intense pressure of everything going on. Nevertheless, Garry has been shortly announced for the UFC 298 card as he's rebooked against Jeff Neal. And that's certainly a fight we all need to see. Now, truthfully, a few of these things have been found to not be completely true or have been exaggerated. He didn't take his wife's ex-husband's name, and her ex-husband does not live with the pair. The book Garry's wife released in her words was an 11-page audible satire take on the life of a wag.
I wrote a book called How to Be a Wag. Now that statement is a stretch. I can hardly call myself an author of an 11-page audible-only satire story that was written in 2010.
So in that context, it's easy to feel kind of bad for Garry right now, right? The MMA community took some details based on rumors and ran with it to a level that'll likely haunt him and his family for years to come. But when you remember why Ian Garry became public enemy #1, it becomes easy to understand how he's in this position to begin with. He really has nobody to blame but himself. The MMA community can be a cutthroat place, and things can often go too far. But he wanted this. He invited this kind of energy and attention, and whether things have risen to ridiculous levels or not, he didn't expect the consequences that might just come to bite him on the ass with it. Whatever the case, he is one of the top prospects the UFC has to offer. And I think everyone can agree, the sooner Ian Garry can stay away from constant drama, the better his chances of fulfilling his true potential.